everybody. I'm Mark Fierro with Vegas Legal Magazine Podcast. Here with the publisher, Tyler Morgan. Fierro Communications Vice President, Jeff Haney. Say hello, Jeff.
Hello, Jeff.
Nerdy Purdy is on the board. We're all here today, and we're here with a guest. Interesting guest. This is a great show because you're going to learn how to be a better lawyer. Somebody told me a long time ago, if you want to learn how to be a great boxer, talk to a boxing judge. Figure out what people want and then do that. So we're talking with a judge, not just any judge. Man who, when he retired, was the longest serving judge in the history of the district court here in Southern Nevada. My friend, my pal, Don Mosley.
Good afternoon.
The only guy that, he was known as the hanging judge. I always said that at least half of the people that he had put away were sentenced for traffic crimes. He made Clint Eastwood look like Richard Simmons before he bulked up. So here's the guy. You've seen it all. You've seen the blow-its. You've seen the way people come to court. They think they're going to roll the judge. They're going to roll the prosecutor. They're going to walk their guy because they got the best suit in town. Let's hear it. What are the big mistakes that these guys make?
You know, it's interesting when you mention how they come to court. Things have changed a lot in the last 20 or 30 years. But we still have dress code, but it's relaxed. But it's an interesting profession. I've enjoyed it all these years, and the thing I think is important for the young people to realize when they start the profession is that you make your own reputation. It doesn't take long for a judge or the other attorneys to know what you're about and what they expect from you.
We do have, and I covered the courts for Channel 8 for years and years, and you could see, you knew whether they had a piece of paper in their hands or what. There were a couple of people in town that were prepared to the nth degree. I mean, they had that case in their mind, could run it backward and forward, knew what the other side was going to argue, how they were going to argue, and the argument that they made before the judge, they kept short, cogent, and to the point.
And the other side of that is those that come to court that think they're going to win just because they have a unique personality. They're just going to charm the judge and not say anything that really makes sense, but they're just going to preen a bit and try to persuade.
It seems to me that courts just were slammed, particularly criminal cases, and a lot of it had to do, when it comes right down to it, with the judge's discretion, because you ended up in plea deals that you had a big say in.
Well, a judge should oversee any negotiation. That's part of the judge's function. But you have to understand that the vast majority of criminal cases are negotiated because it would be virtually impossible to try even every serious criminal case. It couldn't happen.
One of the things that happened early on in your career is when we started having cameras in the courts.
Not in my court.
Yeah, and they said this would be the end of the republic. The wheels would come off. We'd all die. The courthouse, the walls would fall out. What was your take on it from the beginning, and how did you feel about it over time?
A good example of the problems associated with cameras in the courtroom was the O.J. trial.
Do you think that went over? Is that what you're trying to do?
That was just a circus. People were appearing, different attorneys every third day. You'd have another attorney making his appearance, And I allowed cameras, all joking aside, the opening arguments, the closing arguments, but I did not let the cameras be involved in testimony, because you find that the witnesses are intimidated, and it just affects the whole situation.
I remember we had a case, a guy that was had been convicted of a couple of straight up murders before, and was in Nevada for another killing, and just I think it was Judge Thomas's court just took apart the chair that he was in and about killed 3 bailiffs while we're sitting there. And the judge took me back in the chambers. He says, "What do we do? This guy's going to act out until we get rid of the cameras." He was saying, "As the camera's here, I'm going to keep doing this." And I said, "Judge, if we pull the cameras, when that guy goes back up to the jail tonight, that's the end of cameras in the courtroom forever. All you have to do is act like an idiot, and that'll be that." And Judge Chuck Thompson went ahead and he said, "No, we're gonna cover your mouth. We're going to put you in shackles if we have to, but the camera's going to stay." So we were very fortunate.
I found that the taser belt works pretty well too.
That'll do it.
Hit them a couple of times with that.
Even if they weren't attentive in school, about that second or third time they'll sit up and take notice. And this was the land of, people aren't really aware of this. Bob Stodahl, who was my news director at Channel 8, had everything to do with getting cameras in the courtroom. The cameras hadn't been in the courtroom. So the thing was back the spec trials, they had the whole camera rush, and you'd have cameras running into the courts. They'd say something interesting, they'd run out to go process their film. And so we had a tough go of it. And when I was taking cameras in the court, that was among the first times. But Nevada, specifically Southern Nevada, had a national reputation for being among the most open. And initially, for years, we didn't have any problems. The only thing that I came to know towards the end of my tenure there was I never saw one single acquittal, with the exception of one of the members of the Lamb family. Other than that, all the high-profile trials in Southern Nevada, every single one of them ended with a guilty verdict. Every single
When
one.
exactly did they start bringing the cameras in out here?
Say again?
When exactly did they start bringing the cameras into the courtroom?
They started right at 80, I believe. It was right at 80. And I know right after that, I was on there all the time. As a matter of fact, it was earlier than that. It was 78, 79. And we had some, we hit the big one where the cameras were in the courtroom every day for, God, it just seemed like an eternity, was at Howard Hughes Will. And that just went on and on and on. So when you came to the courts, what experience did you bring to court? What had your career existed of prior to you getting to the district court?
Well, I was a prosecutor, city attorney for a period of time, and then I was a municipal judge before I was elected to the district court. So I had some experience, but I can tell you that to be a good judge, it's like so many things, is an evolving process. You don't just get up and sit on the bench and know everything you're supposed to know the first day. You learn as you go along, and hopefully you don't do a lot of damage while you're learning. But it's important to realize that you never stop learning. You really don't.
I remember your court had there was a level of, an extra level of kind of a serious feel to it. There's no screwing around, not in the outside, not walking in, not with your bailiffs, not with your staff, not
Have you
with
seen the
anybody.
size of this guy?
Yeah.
Screw around in his courtroom.
Just if he threw an ashtray at you, that might straighten you out. Solemnity, I suppose, gravitas.
Honestly, you can let the attorneys run the courtroom, or the judge can run the courtroom. Now, that's not to say that you should be a tyrant. That is something that sometimes people get involved in. They've got that robe on and they have absolute power in that courtroom, and they just become a kind of tyrant. And that's not a good thing either. But I always felt that if you let the attorneys know what's expected, what the process is going to be, you want to approach a bench, you ask to approach a bench. You don't just come up there and start waving papers. And the same thing with witness. You want to approach a witness with a piece of evidence or something of that nature. You say, may I approach the witness? The judge says yes, or perhaps no, depending on the situation. But there are certain rules, and once they understand what's expected, it goes very smoothly.
Brevity's big in your courtroom, wasn't it?
What's that?
Brevity. You just kept people to the point and move along. We'll move along, counselor. We'll move along now.
Well, they say a lawyer makes his living by the sweat of his tongue, and he's not afraid of hard work.
But I saw over time, and let me ask you this: before you pulled the pin, how long did you know that this was coming up and this was your last go of it? Was it from the day that you were elected, your last term, or when did you pretty much know?
Oh, I think my last term, I realized I was going to retire, and I retired at a time when I was still healthy enough to do something. I've seen so many judges just stay on that bench till they can't sit up any longer, go home, sit on the couch, turn the TV on, and die. And that didn't appeal to me. You know, I've got hobbies, I do all the horses, and I've got training, and I've got cars I rebuild, and I've got things to do. And I wanted to have some time to do them. And I was 33 years on the bench, I figured that should be sufficient.
I know a little bit of background on this. I'll tell you what a good idea this was. The first thing he did was got on one of his horses, brother's horse, right? And the horse almost kicked him to death. He's kicked him right in the chest.
Horses, and he got a bee under his saddle. And as soon as I stepped in that stirrup and flung my leg over, that horse went straight up.
Oh!
Yeah, that was kind of a bad day.
And when he says kind of a bad day, that what he actually means, it almost killed him.
It really did. It really did. I was in the hospital 25 days. It was a mess.
Okay, a little context here. We're talking
You
about a
don't
real
see him get
cowboy
around any
judge.
horses.
We're talking about a real cowboy judge with real horses, as you've heard, and what, there is no real cowboys without any guns.
So I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and had a horse when I was young. But when they buck me off when you're 12 years old, you just bounce.
Yeah, couple
They
times.
don't bounce too well these days.
So, I understand that you even have some opinions regarding the Second Amendment, huh?
Well,
Do
the
you
Second
take a-
Amendment is always an issue, it seems.
Yep, it is, and more so, it seems now, more than ever. Let me ask you something. I've always been a gun owner. I just got back from Pro Gun Club in Boulder City. My shoes are all dirty because I'm running around out in the dust there. We had a good old time shooting. So that's the perspective that I come from. But the question, and it seems to me, somebody that cares about the law and cares about our country as much as you do, and caring about gun owners, what do we do about these shootings that just come up? You can set your clock to them 2 a month now, mass shootings.
Well, it's a people problem, not a gun problem. But we use these band-aid approaches to, they say, well, if they outlaw this gun or this bullet or this, somehow it'll cure the situation, which is nonsense. And unfortunately, there is a concerted effort on the part of Michael Bloomberg, Pelosi, Feinstein, some of those people, to actually disarm America. They do not
You
want
think that's
private
your ultimate
ownership
goal?
of guns. Absolutely, I'm absolutely sure of it. They don't want private ownership of guns. The police and the military, and that's it. And that's where they're headed with it.
So how do you feel about the argument that, with the automatic rifles, that if we got rid of the automatic rifles, then if somebody wanted to go out and go into a shooting, they wouldn't be able to get as many rounds off quickly, and it would provide more time for people to flee, get safety, or police to come and disarm the man. If all you had was a pistol versus,
Fully
an
automatic.
AK-47 or something.
Well, of course, when you say automatic, that's a machine gun. You say a semi-automatic is what you're talking about.
I'm not a gun professional.
Well, you can get a gun.
Oh, straighten him out.
I'm from the East Coast, so I'm still getting used to the
Well,
Western gun life out here.
The thing about it, if someone walks into a theater or something, he can have 2 or 3 pistols on him.
Yeah,
You know,
true.
I mean, and then he starts shooting. The natural inclination of people is to run. They're not going to attack him. When did you ever see a crowd attack a person with a gun and take it away from him? I don't think I've ever heard of it.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just hoping they're not next, and they hide, whatever, which is natural.
Yeah.
But so you don't need a semi-automatic to kill.
That's a
lot of
good
people.
point. They could come in with multiple pistols.
Yeah, and you could have a speed loader and a revolver. You just stand
Yeah.
in there. It doesn't take long to load a gun.
I can settle this once and for all, and I did it when I was a reporter at Channel 8, and I did it at the gun range over there on Tropicana, on East Tropicana. And they happened to have one of the best machine gunners. He was competitive machine gunner on there. He had a German Schmeisser, very, very well respected, never jams. He'd
Sounds
throw
like
it in the
a dog.
mud, do whatever you want to, and hit 32 rounds a second, I think, is the fire rate. And I said, we'll make this even, okay? I'll let you go ahead and you call, ready on the left, ready on the firing line, fire, and I'm gonna use this $129 Sears 12-gauge shotgun that I just pulled the plug out of, and let's see who gets what first. And I outshot him. I'd never shot that gun before, but I will tell you, if you wanna find out what'll stop a guy with a machine gun, a guy with a 12-gauge shotgun with the little wooden dowel in it taken out so that it turns into a high capacity. Nobody can stand up to that, and nobody can stand up to that.
Short range, 12-gauge shotguns, one of the most lethal things you can have.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, we just stood next to a high rate of fire machine gun. The brass was literally going into the camera, and we were doing slow-mo, so we were very, very close to the fire. And the rate of fire, as tremendous as that is, it's not made to be an accurate weapon. A machine gun's actually a defensive weapon. Make everybody get down so that nobody's standing up, and then the second person, in military terms, is the guy that picks people off. Machine guns are very, very threatening. They kill a lot of people. These things that have happened in schools, in theaters, where people are locked down, they really don't have a way out. Do you see a way? Is there some way?
I have said for many years, actually it began with that shooting in Colorado with a school years ago. My thinking was this: there should be a designated shooter at a school, or a theater, I suppose. But anyway, someone is trained to use a gun. Have it in a locked closet. When something breaks out like that, this person could go to get that gun. Now, he's not saying, he may not have a shootout with this person and kill the offender, but he can sure keep him in the corner till the police get there, instead of this just executing people like this all through the hallways and wherever it might be. And if you had that person there, it could make, I think, a large difference.
The other thing is, you're never gonna stop somebody who wants to kill people from killing people. I mean, if somebody really has it in them that they wanna go kill somebody, and you take away guns, they're gonna find a knife, they're gonna find some means. I mean, look at the guys with the trucks, they're just running over pedestrians, I mean, so I think because the commonality of the incidences have been firearms.
Twice a month.
Everybody wants to focus on the firearms, but I think it's more of a, we need to sort of get the population in check, maybe hold people accountable for, for guns, background checks, or check up on them on a regular basis, or people that have issues that kind of limit what they can do or what freedoms they have. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, the guns have definitely gotten the brunt of the blame, but
Well, there's 2 points, I think, Ty, to address what you're saying. Number one is you hear about these people being hit with hatchets and machetes and
Yeah.
everything else on the street, that just impromptu killings, that kind of thing.
yeah.
And the other thing is you never hear how many people are saved by the use of the gun.
Yeah.
I'm a member of the NRA, obviously. Most people realize that, I think. I get this magazine every month, and it has a list nationally of the shootings where a homeowner or someone was out in their car has saved or someone else
Yeah.
with the use of their gun. But you never see it on 6 o'clock news. You never see it anywhere, really. It's the gun's the bad thing. You
Yeah.
can't do anything good.
There's not enough conversation about the good stuff. People can't keep the ratings up. But it's also, a lot of it is the ability of the media. I mean, I think Twitter, everything that we have, we've had the ability to just expose all the incidents that have been happening. So, I mean, say 20 years ago, people didn't hear so much about gun shootings and all that kind of stuff and everything. And now, because you do something, someone's got Twitter, they're gonna post it themselves. I mean, everybody just hears about it more, so they think that the whole world is sort of going down the toilet, but it's not necessarily any different than it was 25, 30 years ago.
Right, well, on a similar topic to what the judge just mentioned, Judge, I'm wondering if you're following the big case currently pending before the US Supreme Court involving concealed carry permits. It originates from a state law in California that says that a person will only be given a concealed carry permit if they can demonstrate to their local sheriff that they have, in quotes, a good cause to have one. And that's, apparently the Ninth Circuit upheld that, but there's a challenge before the US Supreme Court. I was just wondering if you had any insight into what may happen with that one.
Well, I can't tell you the particulars of the case, but I can tell you this: I don't think it's appropriate to say that you have a Second Amendment right to have a weapon if you can convince some yo-yo over here at the police station that you should have a right to a weapon. And that's basically what that's about.
That's basically where it stands as of now.
But if you'll see, Chicago's a good example, you'll see some jurisdictions that made it so tough to exercise that your constitutional right. To get guns, these high taxes on guns and licensing requirements yearly to renew your license, goes on and on. They're doing everything they can possibly come up with to frustrate possession of a firearm.
The one thing that drives me nuts is the open carry laws, and because I see people, I've seen them in other states, and when you're openly carrying a weapon, if we're sitting there in a bar and we're having a good time, and all of a sudden we start, well, you ought to, and I'll tell you, if one of them's carrying an open carry, we're gonna find out if somebody in the room's got a concealed gun, because that guy with the open carry is gonna get shot. I'm not gonna let him go crazy on me. I'm not gonna let him start up.
I don't think the open carry is a very good idea, frankly. I mean,
It's almost like in your face threat.
What's the purpose of the open carry?
Well,
Why was that even?
It comes from the notion, I suspect, and I follow most gun things pretty closely, is it's a statement saying that I'm guaranteed this and you can't stop me from carrying it. But it looks awful threatening, and today's world. To put this in perspective, when these cases, we now have mass killing with a gun, average of twice a month. In '66, Richard Speck killed 8 women, stabbed them to death. He was front page news for what, 2 years, 3 years? Now it's like, I remember when those poor people got killed in Albertsons years ago. They were the tough front page story for maybe 2 days, because it's just come that much more commonplace.
Yeah, it's nuts. I don't know what the solution is to this, to be quite honest with you.
And the saddest
It may
thing
not be
is,
one.
the saddest thing is if you look at our outcomes and then you look at these other countries, they don't have any homicides. They have nothing. I don't know how to put the genie back in the bottle, but I do know this. The one thing that it's there, it's our right, and it may sound funny, but I don't know what countries, some countries may be willing to take us on when we're in their turf, but the idea of anybody coming to the United States to wage war against American citizens, that would last about 5 minutes, because we're armed to the teeth. We've got more guns than your army has, and that's just in our bedrooms. And whether you like it or not, or whether that seems like a silly notion or not, what kept us isolated all these years with these nice big oceans. Well, everybody has the ability to transport hundreds of thousands of men now. We're not the only ones. But boy, I'd hate to be that other guy when they got here. So there is a flip side to gun ownership.
Well, they might land on California first.
That's right. One of those neighborhoods of love, and they'd be okay. They
Might get hit with some tofu and some gluten-free,
There is
God
that.
knows what.
Well, I think what it might come down to, Tyler, to address your point, is how far does the Second Amendment extend? Does it extend to the right to bear arms outside of the home? And then does it extend that right to bear concealed weapons outside the home? And then does it go so far as to carry non-concealed weapons outside the home? Where is the line
Yeah, because I
drawn?
think Ginsburg is the one that came out with the opinion that because of the time when the amendment was written, that the intent was on something that's relevant to today's standards, and that we shouldn't be able to just run around with guns in our pockets, and that it should be more of a protectionist thing, because I believe what you said was that it was intended to protect one's home and property from a takeover by, the British soldiers coming into their home and stuff, and that was like the intent of the bear arms. And then it's
So you can have a couple muskets, is what she was.
yeah, like you can have a couple muskets if, the red coats come in and wanna, stay in your home and take over. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean,
That goes to the larger argument that Ginsburg and her ilk think that the Constitution is what they call a living document. So it can be
Yeah.
molded and changed to fit the times and gee whiz. And what that means really, it would mean nothing. It'd be like legislation. You wanna change it, here's the process, just go ahead and change it. And we would recognize it in about probably 30, 40 years. It wouldn't be anything like it is today.
There definitely is something about the United States Constitution that allows it, in many ways, to stand above these other countries. They talk about this, this first among equals, that the United States has taken this position. But the truth is, you know what to expect here. I always said Las Vegas was successful because you knew the House was going to take 3%, but you also knew that they weren't going to take more than that. They weren't going to shave dice. They weren't going to play anything hinky. You never found a fixed game unless it was the individual dealer. And that's what you get with the United States. That's what I think there was such a huge concern about the sanctity of our elections. But you knew what you were going to get, with very few exceptions. You couldn't have a judge waving his finger and deciding who was going to go where. We're a nation of laws, and so I do think that the Constitution has brought us, so much of those strengths. So, what do you find yourself sitting and second guessing judges on these big trials that end up televised? You would never do that, right?
Well, I have been known to scream at the television from time to time. Oh, by the way. See, here's the thing about it. when you hear about a trial being reported, I've had my trials reported, I didn't recognize them. It's impossible really to, in a little snippet on the news or whatever, to explain what actually is transpiring and all the things that went into the process. So you get a little smattering of this and you think, my Lord, that doesn't sound right. Well, probably more to it, you see.
I know that in crisis, in handling crisis and in litigation support, most of the time I find myself saying, when I first meet the client, there has to be a bigger story here. I know you didn't just do da-da-da-da, and that's my only, introduction to them, is seeing something in the newspaper when I get a call from a law firm. And then sure enough, you hear the backstory, and there's always more to it. There's always more to it. Who are the great criminal defense attorneys out there, do you think, today?
Well, you've got Tom Picaro and Mike Amador, and some of those people I think are good. A lot of people within the public defender's office are very experienced. People say, well, you've got a public defender, don't you want a real lawyer? I've heard that. Well, let me tell you, those public defenders do that every day. While the real lawyer, the person out here in this building over here, may have a criminal case twice a year. So I wouldn't change the public defender.
And a lot of them are there because they love it, and the only reason they're there is because they love it. Lord knows it's not because of the pay or because they're able to have a lighter caseload. I know they work their butts off. We've been very fortunate in that regard, and we've got a couple of pretty good criminal defense attorneys that have come out of that office, and a lot of people who worked as special public defenders when there was some sort of conflict that you would see a lot of real talent in those areas. Let me ask you, I always wonder, because I'm not the one making those big decisions. Does the mid-level appellate court, does that change things substantially? Does it just give another bite of the apple?
Well, see, I didn't deal with that very long.
No.
That happened just prior to my retiring. So, but I think it's probably a good thing, because the caseload is just staggering. And so this probably was something we needed.
Part of growing up process. So, what's next for you? What you're rebuilding the car? You go out hunting?
Mark, I don't know when I had time to go to work. I am so busy, and just loving life, And the nice thing about it, I can get up at 7 o'clock, I can get up at 8 o'clock, I can get up at 9 o'clock. That's kind of nice.
It's nice, you just wake up when the dog decides to get up.
That's right.
I got a question, and it's getting all over the news now, but Arkansas, their whole issue with the executions right now, where they're trying to execute all those people before the meds expired. What's your take on the death penalty?
Well, that's an age-old question. I don't oppose the death penalty under the proper circumstances. However, in Nevada, I wish they'd just do away with it.
Yeah.
Because it's ineffective. I was a judge for 33 years. I handled capital cases much of that time. One person that I sentenced to death has been executed.
Yeah.
And that was a fellow named Calambo up in Reno, and that's because he refused any further appeals. So all those trials we had, where death penalty was actually the sentence, were for naught. And it's such a waste of time and money. It's so many, if you're aware of all the different things you have to do on a death case, we call it the death case.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to have daily transcripts, you've got to have 2 lawyers, one lawyer's got to be death qualified.
Oh, yeah.
It goes on and on and on, and the money and time we spend on these death cases is inordinate. And for what? No one ever gets executed.
Yeah.
So
a lot
if
of
you
people,
wanna use it, use it.
I think
If you
most
don't, get rid of
people
it.
die in
Put it
their
down.
cell before they even get executed.
Yeah.
But they're all dying of like diabetes or heart attacks and stuff.
I've told clients who were victims. They were the victims, and I said, before you make any grand pronouncements, please hear me out. Please hear me out, because if you scream loud enough and the case warrants it, you could get the district attorney's ear and we could turn this into a death case. But let me tell you what's going to happen. Your guy is not going to be killed. Okay, he's not going to be put to death. But I will tell you this: he'll never have to worry about getting stabbed. He's never going to have to worry about sexual assault. He's never gonna have any of those, he's still gonna have access to drugs, because no matter how tight they screw down these people, there's always a way to get drugs into prisons. I said, he'll never have to walk the yard and look over his shoulder, because in our world, the condemned person is viewed as the more dangerous. Well, I don't care if you're 5'2", if you get to walk through prison and never touch anybody but a guard, you're okay, you're gonna live. You got 3 hots and a cot and a television. So, it's the idea of pursuing it, you gotta think
I mean, the
twice.
public thinks that, you know, you've been convicted, all right, now take them away and kill them.
Start crying.
They think it's, you know, as if we have the guillotine system in place or something.
Dead man walking.
But it's it's a nightmare to try and put just the execution. I mean, nobody wants to be the person in the room doing it. They don't really get paid well to do it, and
Well, I volunteered to be a witness from time to time.
Yeah.
In fact, some of these pedophiles that do these terrible things to these children, I agreed to take them hunting with me. But don't want to take me up on it, but,
do you
Would
get
you be scared coming back alone though?
do you get a different sense walking into your courtroom when it's a death case versus a non-death case? Do you sort of have a different, you know, feel or anything, or is it just business as usual?
well, I don't think it's any different really, except it's the things you have to do
Yeah.
to make it a death case. But beyond that, it's just another case. Because let me tell you something, being in prison the rest of your life is not a small matter.
No.
In fact, I think given a choice, I'm not so sure I would not opt
I
for
mean, the
death.
suicide rate in prison for non-murderous felons is still pretty high. I mean, people lose their minds in there.
I think people would have a different impression if they saw a close-up, witnessed execution. I have. And I got to know the person, Carol Edward Cole, and interviewed him at length. He'd killed 12 people in his life that he admitted to. And he was a straight-up psychosexual serial murderer.
Mm-hmm.
He raped his victims. He's a very small man, he was only 5'3", 5'4", they never saw it coming. Choked him to death, killed 2 here in Nevada. And wanted to be, his secret that he told me, he said, I don't want you telling anybody until I'm gone. He said, I want this over. He said, I don't want to be put in a position where I can kill again. He was a chronic alcoholic. He had a conscience when he was sober and had no conscience whatsoever when he was drunk. And I'm going to tell you that it looked like something out of Hitchcock. They lowered the curtains and you could see the line being stretched out in silhouette. You could just see the silhouette of the person leaning over the gurney and inserting the needle. And they raised the curtains, and here was this 5'3", 5'4" guy who had, you could see the ravages of alcohol all over his face. And he looked up at the warden, there's a little slot there, the director of prisons. And the warden nodded his head, and I'm here to tell you, this guy coughed and was dead. It was one of the earliest that they had used, the lethal injection. And so they had a electroencephalogram, and a very simple one, and you could see the brain waves that got more and more shallow. But he didn't suffer. He suffered more from sticking a needle in his arm than he did from anything else.
And then you look at what he might have done to his victims.
The next victim, and what he had done to his victims.
The suffering that he visited on other people.
And those families, the devastation. But it seems, does it seem to you, it seems this way to me. I make the editorial comment, I've been here most of my life. And it seems that something changed in Las Vegas. I don't know, maybe in the last 5 or 6 years, it just seems things got a little bit meaner. Have you seen that?
Well, I think you could say that about our entire country, you know. But, well, I think you see, of course, I'm quite a bit older than most people at this point, but when I was younger, growing up in Oklahoma, you didn't have to lock the door in your house. You went to sleep at night, you didn't lock the door. A 57 Plymouth had no lock on the trunk lid, you just pushed a button. That's how things used to be. And it has evolved into such a mess by comparison. And so now, everybody's looking for, looking out and what's coming next. And that's why it's important to have a gun. I don't know how many guns I've purchased for people over the years and shown them how to use it, because I think everyone ought to have a gun to protect themselves. And whether it's in the house or in their car or out here on the street, with people with machetes, with machetes come up behind us and whacking people, you want to have a gun.
I'll tell you, these days, I mean, my doorbell rings, it's the scariest thing in my house. It's like, who in the hell is at my house?
Well, what's
It
worse?
is.
Of course it is.
All right,
Well, lack of
everybody
civility.
down, let's check check through a window. I'm not expecting anybody, and then God forbid it's like my neighbor trying to come say hello or something or drop off cupcakes. I mean, that's just how society is.
When we were growing up, yeah, the doorbell would ring or the phone would ring, and it would be a joyful occasion,
Yeah.
Oh, get it, like, now it's like, oh, yeah, like you were just saying, like, get down. It's
Oh,
quiet.
yeah.
What they're doing though, and I've seen this more than I care to remember actually. Get the doorbell rings, 8 o'clock at night. You look through the peephole, here's a young girl. Open up the door, my car won't start or
Oops.
whatever. As soon as that door's open, here's two big guys open the door, run over the guy, slam the door behind him. Now he's in the house, no one knows it. He's got his gun or whatever he's got, and you are his prisoner.
Yeah.
See?
He broke down. Nerdy Purdy broke down, came to my house. I don't know what time it was. I know it was after 1. And me and John Browning went to the door to say hello. See me and him and 14 of John Browning's friends. Little 9mm, happy little guys just waiting to go to work. Yeah, there are no good things, my mother used to say, that happen after 11 o'clock at night.
No.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's when you start curtailing things. Let me ask you this. When you're up there and you do end up in a criminal trial and you're the one guy that is aware of this guy's criminal past, there are very few people that get to the district court doors that are involved in a full-blown trial that haven't been around the block a couple of times. Doesn't it take a lot to keep you from just saying, I know you did it? I got every reason in the world to believe this is another mark on the post.
Well, the vast majority of cases, the jury is the prior fact. So it's not incumbent upon the judge to indicate what he thinks one way or the other, or she. But I used to say, I met a classier bunch of people in criminal court than I did in civil court. In fact, in 1967, I was chief judge, and we decided to specialize civil, criminal, and juvenile.
Yes.
And I opted for criminal for that reason. Because in a criminal case, everyone in the room, except the jury, knows what's going on.
Knows who's
The
who.
attorneys knows who did what, and it's just a matter of whether or not they can convince one juror out of 12 to throw the thing out, you see. And so it's a little game they play in a sense, and but there's no mystery involved. In a civil case, everybody lies. I mean, both sides it's just a circus, and so I'd much prefer a criminal trial.
Where do you see, what would you say? I've been involved in some high-profile cases. And in the Michael Jackson case, we had 18 months of propofol will kill you if you look at the bottom. You could only use propofol if you're there with the Joint Chiefs of Staff and you had the President's approval. All of these ridiculous things that made propofol the most dangerous stuff in the world. Meanwhile, you don't even have to be a doctor to administer it. You can be a nurse to administer anesthetist. They do it every day in these centers where they do colonoscopies. 18 months of negative media, and then I get in, and I've got a story to tell. My doctor had a story to tell. It was in Los Angeles. Got my guys on the Today Show, and that day, that judge threatened to put me in jail. That never would have happened in Southern Nevada. Never would have happened in Southern Nevada. But we had a right, I thought, to at least tell certainly the police, the prosecutor's office had put it out there 1,000 times, very, very negative things, pointed things about not only my client, but about the drug that was used. Do you ever find yourself wanting to put the toothpaste back in the tube, or do you see a role for the media?
Well, the sad fact of the matter is that although you admonish a juror not to look at the news, not to read the paper and all this, you know, human nature is human nature. And they're at home, there's paper, who's gonna know?
No.
So these kind of things get out. And it's just, sometimes it's shared with the other jurors, sometimes it isn't, you know, whatever, but it's a dangerous thing. And of course, on the other side of the equation, there's a First Amendment, you have a job to do, so it's a tough call.
Yeah.
I often find myself digging from the minute that I get hired, when I get retained on a case, trying to undo simply the credibility that the police and the criminal justice infrastructure bring when they point the finger at somebody. Hey, I listen to it. If they say the guy was arrested in front of so-and-so, in my heart of hearts, I go, well, let's get this thing over with. You can't help it because they're so often right, and they're, you know, for the most part, to the huge extent of the law, to our extent of our experiences, they're honest players, they're honest brokers of the fact. But I think that, well, we had the case that we talked about with Dominic Gentile, and he had a right to defend his client to the court of public opinion. There's a lot to be said for that, I think. Just my take on it.
It's a lot easier as long as Nancy Grace isn't the opinion going against your client.
Yes, and pounding on it, and pounding
Yeah.
on it, and pounding on it.
Her and that Judge Janine, I think it is. Oh, I love following the media on court cases and stuff, but once they start getting on it, it's just, you know, cat's out of the bag and things are just going nuts.
There is no defense attorney that lives in that land.
And the world thinks that they speak the gospel.
Let me ask you this, Judge. In all the times that you've seen I know that you had to be following these cases closely. I know police find themselves in tough situations, but it seemed a year ago, 2 years ago, that there was a police confrontation on every corner. It seemed to some part of the country that there was a shootout with police. I know that subsequent to that tough summer, that there have been studies that show police shoot in almost exact proportion to the size of the public. The percentage of black people who are shot, killed by police officers is almost the exact same percentage. Now, that's not to say that blacks aren't arrested or beaten by police in disproportionate numbers. Again, we don't know what precipitated that, but we do know that that's the case. But the exception, the one thing that is the same, is that whites tend to get killed by police officers in the same proportion that blacks do. Do you see some changes in the system that could better address? I mean, you get a lot of police officers who are in the right who have their lives destroyed, and conversely, you get a lot of bad cops. We've seen them. I've seen them myself. I don't care what anybody says on those videos, and they walk. What's your take on all of that?
Well, unfortunately, today we have the Ferguson situation in Missouri.
Which was probably the most justified shooting out of all of them. That was a bad response by that community.
But there's a segment of our society that are going to demonize the police every chance they get.
Sure.
And the police now, I think, although they won't admit it, but they're backing off. They're not doing the things that the police work they used to do because they don't want to expose themselves to all the liabilities, you know, and the publicity and all that they have to undergo. So it's really a negative thing. It's unfortunate. But I'll tell you this, you know, you hear them say, well, there's a disproportionate number of blacks or Hispanics or whatever in prison and all that. They do a disproportionate amount of crime. I watched it for 33 years. You don't have to tell me how it works. I've seen it. And I have never, ever seen a case. Now, I'm not saying it can't happen, but a case where 911 is called and the police dispatcher or whoever says, well, is the victim black or white? Black, I'll get around coming down there. It was white, boy, let's get down there and save that guy. No way. They take a case as it comes, and they don't care what color.
Play it where it lies.
You know, and so, generally speaking, now I agree with you, Mark. There are those exceptions, unfortunately. You know, occasionally you'll see a cop that's kind of a renegade, but that's very rare.
You know there are two things that I'll remember for the rest of my life. One is in the Texas shootings where, you know, there were people who were demonstrating and they were armed, and the police were being very, very vigilant of who was armed, and it was a Black Lives Matter, or some of the members of that group were involved. And then the shooting breaks out, and there was a police officer who, when they could not tell where the bullets were coming from. It's one of the most touching things I've ever heard in my life. And she said, this police officer pulled me to the ground, laid his body over mine, and said, they're not gonna get you until they get through me. And a minute ago, she was on the other side of the line.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that doesn't get
Yeah,
publicized.
he went out of his way to protect
save
a protester who was protesting
Yeah.
ostensibly against.
And I will tell you, to anybody in the audience who cares, go back and look at Ferguson. Ferguson is the one that started it all off, and that police officer had absolutely no choice. Once he had pulled out the young man over, he's huge, outweighed the police officer, was bigger than the police officer, almost got the guy's gun away from him once. The police officer fired at him. The guy retreated, turned around, and came back towards the police officer, and the police officer said, he's gonna get my gun.
That's right.
Saw how it was. And that was unfortunately, that was also the one that was mishandled, but there you are. Judge, thanks a lot for coming in.
Yeah, thanks for coming, that was good.
It was great. It was always great to hear the perspective of a real pro. And boy, if we ever had one, it is Judge Don Mosley. That we call it a day. The Vegas Legal Podcast, want to thank you. Judge, you'll always be Judge Mosley. You'll always be Judge Mosley. Thanks for coming in. Tyler Morgan, publisher of Vegas Legal Magazine, thanks for doing the good work, bringing some new life to the legal community in Southern Nevada. Jeff Haney, Vice President of Bureau of Communications, the friendliest marketing firm in Las Vegas. David Nerdy Purdy on the board. And for all of you out there with a story idea and axe to grind, get a hold of Vegas Legal, the leading magazine in Southern Nevada legal market. You can get Tyler at
702-222-3476.
reach out, tell your friends, have a good one. We are out of here.